Welcome to the Point of Convergence podcast. I am your host, Grant Lira. Get ready to sit down, tune in, and implement. Remember, the knowledge you learn here and anywhere else in your life is only worth something to you if you use it. So get implementing after this episode and enjoy. All right. Welcome back to the Point of Convergence podcast. Today, we are joined by Andrew Cagnetta of Transworld Business Advisors. How are you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I cannot complain. And you and me both actually just got some traveling done, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was good to get back out there and go see the world, to go visit my daughter. I saw some franchisees as well. So just talking business out there as well. It was good.
Right on. Right on. Anytime you can get out of the home station, for work is always a bonus.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's good to go out there, even with this increased Zoom capabilities. There's nothing like being able to spend time with people face to face.
Totally. And I think so much of us have gotten used to the Zoom thing and maybe even a little bit burnt out when you actually talk to somebody in person for business. It's super refreshing. You're like, wow, this is awesome. Enjoy this.
Yeah, I just had a meeting today with a client, and it was first time we had seen each other in a while, and it was great. It was great to have her in the office and, talk face to face. There we go.
Rock and roll. So Andy, please give us an update of what's going on with your business right now. Where are you at?
I mean, we're busy. The business brokerage business, which I'm in, we help people buy and sell businesses. I started, my first kind of hat is that, I operate the Florida offices here, and we help people buy and sell business. So we're very busy right now. It's truly a seller's market. Lots of people wanting to buy businesses, a lot of money on the street. So we're seeing an increased activity over the first quarter. And then, of course, 10 years ago, I started my franchise, and I'm CEO of that company. And we have seen an increase in people wanting to buy our franchise, mostly because, people are like success. So they, kind of flock toward it. So there's a lot of people interested in Transworld, opening their own Transworld offices across the country. And just like Florida, our franchisees' offices are very busy these days. And we've seen an increase in the amount of businesses we're selling. But what's been interesting over the pandemic is the increase in the value of the businesses have skyrocketed. And I think we're seeing that in the home, in the home relocation business, certain areas of the country, that the home prices are increasing as well.
So that's interesting. So you're saying right now, there's quite a few people who are looking to exit their business or sell their business?
No, there's actually not a lot of people looking.
Okay, so
there's a lot of people looking to buy. So it's a seller's market. The sellers have the upper hand. I think more people are coming to the market now. I think people, once their businesses have started to recover, people, the business, even the hospitality businesses, they just don't want to go through something like this again. A lot of baby boomers out there and saying, finally, yeah, it's enough. Now that the COVID crisis is kind of waning, it's certainly not over, but it's certainly getting close to being over. People are saying, yeah, it's time for me to go.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I feel like what you're saying, with the people who are up there in age and are looking, not to probably do this for much longer. I think COVID was definitely a nail in the coffin once they recovered from that and they were able to keep operating, saying, hey, I'm done. Let's give this to somebody else because I don't want to deal with something like that again.
Yeah, they took their PPP money and they applied it wisely, kept them in business. Now that their business is recovered and it's looking good, they're like, yeah, I'm not up for the next, I'm not up for the next crisis. And a lot of the business owners we're talking to went through the 2009, 2010 economic downturn. So, we're kind of the generation of people that have been through two major economic crises in the matter of a decade. So it certainly has waned and, certainly burnt out a lot of small business owners.
Yeah, definitely. And along with that, I want to talk a little bit about Transworld. So tell me, what's your story? How did you get into Transworld? Where did that fall in line? When did your entrepreneurial spirit kind of spark?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've always been an entrepreneur. I don't know why. I think it might have been because my dad had a corporate job. He was an engineer. And I think I heard him complain enough at the dinner table that I never wanted to work for someone. So got my entrepreneurial spark. I mean, literally, delivering newspapers, selling coffee on the gas lines in the gas crisis of the 1970s. Now I'm dating myself. When I graduated college, I kind of opened my own business and I kind of fumbled around with a few different types of business in the cell phone industry. I sold guitars for a while. I sold, and I had a pasta shop that we bought and sold in Connecticut. So it was the first time that I'd been in business where I actually bought something, ran it for a little while and sold it. And I did it with a few cousins and it was a lot of fun. It was a small little business, but the idea of buying a business and it making money immediately and selling it was a lot more palatable than the days when I tried to start my cell phone business, when I tried to sell guitars as an independent rep, or when so I'm like, wow, that was a lot easier. So when my wife and I decided to move to Florida, I decided to buy a business. And I had bought and sold a pasta business in Hartford, Connecticut without a broker because I didn't know what a broker was. And then when I moved to Florida, there was all these business brokers and I started visiting them. And it was like being in a used car sales room with most of these guys, except I went to Transworld one day and the owners, Don and Bonnie, very nice people. He was an IBM executive for 30 years. She was an amazing business broker. And they invited me in and it felt like family. So I joined the firm and 2 years later, I bought the company. And so I bought the company. We were one office, 6 people. We put some more tools in place. We expanded throughout the state of Florida, raised some capital along the way, long story. And then in 2010, we said, well, how do we get out of Florida? We're going through this economic downturn. We've grown to 10 offices here in Florida, but how do we get to Atlanta? How do we get to Charlotte without getting on planes and flying around the country? We said, let's franchise. So we looked into franchising and I said, we can't do this. And so the attorney we were working with said, well, if you're not going to do it yourself, why don't you work with the United Franchise Group? So we went to United Franchise Group, which owns brands like Sinorama and Fully Promoted and The Great Greek. And so at the time, they were kind of thinking about business brokerage. They had a small business brokerage franchise started. And so we decided, hey, let's just put it together and let's, roll Transworld out across the world. And that's what we've done together. It's been amazing.
So that's interesting. And I want to side note on something real quick. Hearing about you, running your pasta shop and then running it with your cousins, probably one of the most Italian things I've heard on this podcast so far. So like to hear that. But then secondly, when
I got a bigger one for you too, but we'll talk about it in a minute. So
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to that. Now, when you bought and sold that business, because you said you did it without a broker, what would you have gained from a broker, looking back at that situation? Because I'm sure there's a few listeners out there who don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of, selling companies and using brokers for that. So I want to hear, in your position now, what you think you could have gotten out of it in addition with using the broker.
Yeah, with using a broker, there's no doubt we would have gotten more money for it. I look back on that experience and it was a small little business. We wound up selling it for $65,000, I think it was. There's no doubt it was worth $100,000. Standing still, it was worth $100,000, if not more. And I just underpriced it. I just had no idea how to price a business at the time. We had bought it for $45,000, which was a really good deal at the time. And so I probably could have sold it for much more than I wound up selling it for. But I just didn't know the market. I didn't know how to sell business. I just put an ad in the paper.
I feel like how would you, you know what I mean? Because if you're looking at, let's say, your own business and valuing your own business without having somebody who does that as a profession, I feel like a lot of people wouldn't even know where to start to value their own business.
Yeah. I mean, these days there's a lot of things online. There's value calculators. Even Transworld has a value calculator on our website. Now, it does a decent job, but it gives you a very big range because, valuing a business is an art, not a science. And so the same business in two different cities can be worth completely different amounts of money. And a business located next door to another business can be worth lots of money based on industry, based on longevity, based on earnings. I mean, so there's a lot that goes into valuing a business that, even today it's not an exact science.
Interesting. So I guess looking at it from that aspect, because I wasn't familiar with that. Now you have one company valuing a business at X dollars and another at Y dollars. I guess, how do you guys kind of make sure that what you're valuing these businesses at is accurate, but also, because I know you have to work on like a margin somewhere in there, like you're not going to get the exact dollar amount. So how do you kind of calculate that as close as you can?
There's a lot of ways to value a business, but one of the most accurate ways these days is, thank God for the internet. Again, we've been keeping data on closed sales now for, the better part of over 2 decades, about 2 decades online, I guess. So for 2 decades online, we've had that data now pour into certain databases, deal stats, which used to be called Pratt stats, and there's biz comps, and there's peer comps that gets their comps from the SBA loan that have been made on small businesses. So there's lots of data out there, and you could get pretty close to what your business will be worth. Now, that being said, a business is worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it. So, you could have done a valuation based on comps right at the beginning of the COVID crisis in 2020 of March, and no one would have bought your business. I mean, everybody was scared, didn't know what was going to happen. So nobody would have bought your business. 3 months later, there could have been an unemployed person that would pay 1.5 times what it might have been worth at the beginning of the COVID crisis, or even in 2019. And today, we're seeing business values skyrocket because businesses are doing extremely well coming out of the COVID crisis, where there may be less competition because other businesses have closed. So even though valuing a business, you could get those comps can change based on, local, and then you have some economies here in the United States where people are leaving because they feel like that there's not an advantageous tax reason to stay in somewhere like New York City. And then there might be population gaining places like Florida and Texas because of their preferential tax treatment. So there's a lot of kind of movement out there in the world that might drive values higher in Florida and lower in other places. It's an interesting dynamic.
So that's really interesting, because something I've always said in my own business, and also, talking to people, is data makes you money. And if you're not tracking anything, you don't know, one, how much money you're making. But in your case directly, if you wouldn't have tracked and be able to look at all that data, that spread of data, you would be basically guessing, educated guessing at what the businesses would be worth, because you can compare, like, this business sold for X dollars and this one's very similar, so it should sell around here. So that's cool. You guys basically just look at data along with other things within the business to make sure that the appraisal you're giving is the most accurate as possible.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things, trends, if the business is on its way up or on its way down. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could look at. Competition in the local area. I mean, there could be a lot of things that affect the valuation very quickly. That's, why businesses don't sell for like incredible multiples, because it is a risky endeavor. But at the same time, I do think buying a business is probably one of the most undervalued investments out there in the world. Buying a business and being able to make your money back in, say, 2, 3, 4 year time. And we're talking small businesses, not multi-million-dollar businesses, but small businesses. It is an incredible payback comparative to things like trying to invest in, anything like bonds, and, the stock market's pretty hot these days, but, who knows how long that'll last.
Yeah. So looking at that, you said something interesting there. A lot of people I've had on here have always talked real estate, buy real estate, get that passive income. Now, in your eyes, because you've seen the inside of your industry, would you rather buy real estate or businesses if you're starting to, grow your own wealth and that own income?
Listen, I think real estate is a great play because, it's kind of the long game. And
Yeah.
supposedly nobody ever loses the money when they invest in dirt. Now, I think you can. I've seen people do it. Certainly in the 2009 and 10, people were buying condos and all kinds of things and they lost everything. So, real estate does, as we say, eat. It costs you money to own real estate. So you have to make sure that, you especially income producing things these days. So just like on a pure commercial real estate play, you're looking at a 5-time cap rate these days, 5% cap rate, maybe 7%. So up to 10, used to be a 10% cap rate. So that's a 10-time multiple. And a 5% cap rate is a 20-time multiple. I just told you could buy a business for 2 or 3 times. I mean, just a comparison. Now, you have to operate those businesses. They're not passive income. I don't know that any real estate really is passive income either. You have to work at it. But as far as being able to leverage into real estate may be advantageous as well because banks do lend on it. But buying a business as your primary source of wealth creation is, again, probably one of the best things you could ever do, especially if you're, if you believe in yourself and you have the ability to work hard and put effort in. Go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say, I always tell people, listen, if you buy a good business, something that's been in business for a while, and you do the right thing by the customers, you just go in there, you're a good person, you do the right thing by customers, you have a fair product at a fair price. I don't know how you aren't successful, especially if you're in a place where there's population gain. So you're not being crowded out. Your customer base isn't disappearing. It's actually increasing. You could do very well.
So you said something interesting there, Andy. When you're looking at these businesses, because you can look at all the data, you can look at everything else, but the off-paper things, right? Like, for instance, do you guys ever look at like the CEO and see what that person's like and see if there's any good things or red flags about that person? Does that ever factor into the appraisal of the business?
Yeah, I mean, that could be an opportunity too. What popped into my mind when you said this was this sandwich shop in Jacksonville that we've sold a number of times. But the one original owner who kind of made it famous was belligerent. I mean, like yelled at his customers. And so I think there was an opportunity for the next person to come in and be perhaps as flamboyant, but perhaps be a little nicer. And so I remember I went there for a sandwich and he said, what do you want? I said, I'll take a tuna fish sandwich. He goes, you don't want tuna fish. Okay, I don't want tuna fish. What do I want? You want a steak sandwich? You want a cheesesteak? I'm like, okay, today's cheesesteak, I guess.
So that's interesting because, I have some friends and they buy businesses or they invest in businesses as well. And what they always say is they're looking at, they don't necessarily care as much. They still care about the business, but they look at that person. And if that person believes in themselves and they believe in that person who's running the business, that's like a huge thing. They'll basically just say, hey, this guy's legit. I like him. I know he's good for it. I'm going to invest in his business. Do you guys do any investing or are you just strictly buying and selling?
No, we don't invest in our businesses. We're just a broker. We're here to help people in and out. So it's almost a conflict of interest in investing in it, but not that some business brokers haven't in the past gotten involved in some of the businesses, but very infrequently. Now, for the most part, we're working with buyers who want to buy a business and they're looking to usually replace an income, right? So they come down and, the typical story here in Florida is they came from maybe another country like Venezuela, or they came from if you're in Orlando, we have a lot of people coming from England over here, from London. They come to live in Orlando, or if you're, they're people that are coming down from Canada or New York, and they're looking to replace an income. I need $100,000. I need $200,000. And so, we're helping them decide on what business would be good for them. And there's all kinds of businesses. And of course, we do work with companies that are looking to buy other companies. We have landscaping companies that go around to do like mini roll-ups. They go out and buy companies. We have medical practices that buy other medical practices. So we do have some strategic buyers buying things. But for the most part, it's just everyday entrepreneurs looking to maybe leave corporate America, where they're locked into some sort of salary structure, and have a business where they can build it to create more wealth for them and their family.
Totally. And then circling back to something you said earlier too about franchising, right? Because I feel like a lot of people hear franchising, they know what it is, but to start their own franchise, I feel like is extremely confusing. I'm sure there's a lot of paperwork within that. What was your process like when you guys actually started that?
So one of the things you want to do when you start a franchise is you have to have a good business model, right? And you have to have enough of margins and be able to create enough value so people can pay your royalties. So that's number one. So you have to have a good business model. So once you have a good business model, the second thing we usually like to see before we tell someone that they can start a franchise is they open up a second location, right? It's not just the location where the invested dynamic business broker is. That business model is so good that they could teach someone else to run it somewhere else. And so once that happens, then we're like, aha, this might be something that could be franchised. Now, that doesn't always happen where they have the second location, but that's certainly a great indication that it's going to work. And what we do at Transworld is we'll sit down with someone, with our partners at United Franchise Group, and we have a division that will sit down with them called Accurate Franchising. We'll sit down with them, go over their business model, give them a whole idea, and then we could create all the franchising docs, get them registered, and it's a very reasonable package to go out and do that. And then you're in the franchise business, which is a whole different business in the world as well. Very competitive. But if you have a good business, franchising is very, very hot, as you know. I mean, people want it, and people are looking for the next Orange Theory, the next Dunkin' Donuts, the next McDonald's. People want to kind of jump on that train, the next Serve Pro, the next, Massage Envy. Because the people who bought into those systems and have multiple units are making a lot of money.
Yeah. So essentially, not always necessary, but something you strongly recommend for somebody looking to franchise is, in a word, repeatable success, right? Moving that location somewhere else just kind of as like a proof of concept, like, hey, this works here and it works here. So why wouldn't it work over here?
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I even had to deal with that in the beginning. We had a very successful Florida franchise home office. And then we were bringing franchisees on in the beginning, and it's like, we think this only works in Florida. That only works in Florida. And, we heard that over the years. And so that's not the truth anymore. Now we have wildly successful people all over the United States, Houston and Denver, and, we've built some incredible of Minnesota. I mean, you can't just say it only works in warm weather too. Minnesota is one of our best franchisees. So we've certainly seen that success, even go overseas. And so, my partner, Ray Titus, talks about when he took Sinorama to Australia, and they said, well, we don't do it that way here in Australia. And he's like, well, okay, why don't we just try it? And they were talking about going door-to-door sales. It's like, we don't do door-to-door sales. And it's like, well, maybe you should. And, now Sinorama in Australia has been doing door-to-door sales forever. So
that's cool. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's like that thing, you don't know unless you try. And some places you have to try and you'll succeed, others not so much, but that's part of the process of that. Now, Andy, I want to do something here. Is it cool if I run 3 different scenarios by you so we could kind of walk through how you'd handle each of them?
Sure.
Cool. So the first scenario I have, very successful business owner, right? Been doing it for a while. We have proven success. We're making quite a bit of money. I want to exit. I want to sell the business. what's my steps? What should I be looking to set up in my own business so that when you guys, I reach out to you guys and we sell the business, that it's all ready to go? How do you prepare and prime yourself for actually having that sale?
Well, the number one thing is to have good books and records. So making sure that your balance sheet and your P&Ls are in good shape, making sure that you have a great relationship with the CPA, and making sure we talked about data earlier. So the better CRM system, the better point of sale system that you have in a business, if you have all that clicking, that is going to make my life and the buyer's life and their due diligence a lot easier. So that makes your business very saleable. Once you have decent books and records and you could prove the income that you're making, that's great. Now, there's lots of people who ruin that by trying to do some aggressive tax strategies that may or may not be illegal. And so that's number one. Number two is you want to be growing before you sell. You certainly do not want to be winding down your business, because people are going to draw a line out in the future. A business is worth what it's going to make in the future to a buyer. If revenue and profits are dropping currently, that arrow is going down. Your value is exceedingly going to go down. If you're steady, or at least steady, or you're growing at the clip of 5 to 25%, then the business value is going to be much more. So that's kind of the two things. You kind of be at peak performance, and you have to have all your KPIs and all your P&Ls and balance sheets kind of in a good place.
So that's cool. So listening to that too, like when you're selling your business, people are looking more at trends rather than current revenue, right? They're looking to see if you're going up, if you're going down, if you've been staying the same for a while.
Very important to the bankers. So the SBA actually will not lend on businesses, usually not lend on businesses that have declining revenues. So, that right there with the SBA program now, lending up to $5 million per business, that is a very lucrative way for a business owner to be able to cash out. So, but the other thing is, a quality and quantity of earnings drive multiples. So quality, I just talked about that. You have your KPIs, your balance sheets are shining, the quality of the earnings are going up. You don't have one major customer that's 90% of your sales. The quantity is, if you make, say, $100,000, your business may be worth 2 times. If you make $250,000, your business may be worth 3 times. If you make $500,000, it may be worth 4 times. If you make $1 million, it's worth 5 times. If you make $2 million, it's worth 6 to 8 times. So as the quantity of the earnings goes up, so do the multiples. So that's kind of what you want to do before you sell your business. The first scenario is you're doing great. Well, how great? If you're doing $1 million, we're going to get a lot of money for your business. So
interesting. Okay. So it's like it multiplies the more, quantity you have. That's really cool. That's good to know. Now, within that too, you said banks usually won't lend on somebody going down. What about if you've been, running your business, it's been going pretty good for, a few years, you have some proof under your belt, you have clients, but for the last maybe year or so, it's just kind of, staying steady. You're not really growing, but you're not declining either. Is that a scenario where you guys would feel comfortable kind of helping that person sell the business, or what does that look like?
Yeah, well, we're comfortable helping them if it's going down too. It's just a different story about how it's going to be financed and what the price is going to be. At the end of the day, the market is going to tell you what's going on. Yes, we are comfortable working with someone who's steady. And listen, just like you said before, with the people who want to invest in businesses passively, the people who want to invest in the business actively and operate the businesses, the operating partners, are willing to hear stories too. I mean, we have all the stories in the world. I mean, people get sick, terminally sick, and the business is going to tail off or stay steady because the employees are running it by themselves. I mean, there's a lot of stories out there in the world, and stories are okay. And banks, if something went down, say somebody got sick or COVID, I mean, the banks are not even looking at 2020 numbers anymore because the COVID crisis, for good or bad, we have a business that did better in 2020 and they won't look at those numbers. So they're based in the valuation on 2019 and 2021 numbers.
Interesting. So because I mean, COVID was such an anomaly, it's very, very out there. And then they're not looking at that because like, that's not something predictable. That's not something that we can concrete look at and say, oh yeah, well, this business is doing good. You could have been in the, I don't know, like personal protection, the masks and stuff industry. And obviously your business would have looked like that, but that's not indicative of overall success.
Yeah. I had a printer that was, did well in 2020 because they were able to get their hands on masks, and they went out and hand sanitizer because they sold the promotional specialties anyway. And they got their hands on a supplier, and they did very well in 2020 at the beginning because they were able to sell that PPE. PPP is a whole nother story.
I think I said PPP earlier too.
I don't know. I did it. So PPE. And so now, here we are in 2021, the revenues are down from 2019. And I actually told them, I said, guys, and they did a lot of printing for the event business. So think concerts, think open houses for realtors, and just think during this pandemic, people weren't handing out paper menus. People aren't handing out menus. So the question, so that stuff will come back. I mean, it'll come back on some levels. So they had to wait. They're going to have to wait.
Interesting. So I want to talk this too, because your business is, in my opinion, a pretty unique industry. So when you guys are looking to buy businesses or help sell businesses, sure, with that, are you guys getting most of those leads inbound? Are you ever prospecting to find those leads, or how does that structure work?
No, of course. I mean, that's probably the number one thing we do. We go out there and help you and find people to, that want to sell. I mean, that's our game right now. We're looking for people to find people to sell. So yeah, we're constantly out there looking for, online, digital marketing. We're certainly out there. We have social media campaigns because we're trying to get the awareness out that this is a great time to sell your business. Now, if we have someone that, is willing to buy a certain kind of business like landscaping or insurance, yes, we're going directly to those businesses and asking them if they want to sell.
Cool. So with that too, not as related to this topic, but something I definitely want to talk about. With that, have you noticed you've had good success in some industries, some niches, and not so much success in others? Or is there like trends, not even right now, because like you said, 2020, 2021 is like kind of a weird time, but have you noticed like some industries are doing way better in terms of them actually selling their businesses than others right now in general?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, listen, technology is incredible. I was looking at a list of SPACs, special, acquisition companies, right? So I read through, there were 60 new SPACs, and I read through 40 profiles before I got the one that didn't say technology.
Wow.
So they're all investing in technology. So of course, any technology business is going to be hot right now. So that sector is usually hot. The insurance, anything that's recurring revenues, insurance agencies, accounting practices, those things seem to do very well. The things that are harder to sell sometimes are, sometimes the small blue collar businesses, that might be being replaced, like limos. We used to sell a lot of, taxis and limo businesses, and they went by the wayside. Now, all of a sudden, here we are. They're coming back. Medical transport businesses are big, and private limos. We've sold a couple of those, but certainly not at the level they used to be.
Right on. And Andy, we're coming up on time here, brother. So I want to let you kind of have free reign here. Let us know where to find you. Let us know where to contact you if we want to sell a business. Let us know, wherever we can. If you got anything else going on, let us hear it.
Yeah, so I did promise you that the most Italian thing, you hadn't heard that yet. So, 20 years ago, I started a charity event for the local soup kitchen I was on the board of. And I invited my friends and family because I had the pasta dinner. I could cook for a lot of people. So I invited them over to Soup Kitchen to check out the new facility we had built and cook for, 30 people. We raised like $500. Fast forward 20 years, we're having our 20th anniversary Andy's Family Pasta Dinner, andyspastadinner.com if you ever wanted to check it out. Next year in February, we'll be back in person, but we've raised almost $2 million over that 20 years. The last time we had it in person, we raised about $260,000. We had 1,000 people there. It's become an incredible event. So it's not just me anymore. Of course, it's my family, it's my friends, and we all come together once a year to help those who are less fortunate than us to eat. And that's what LifeNet for Families, the benefactor of the Andy's Family Pasta Dinner, they get the money. So that's what's going on there. That's the most Italian thing you probably heard.
I was about to say you beat it. That was pretty Italian.
So, but at Transworld, we're just busy. Listen, we have the Deal Board podcast, the dealboardpodcast.com. You can check us out there and learn more about buying and selling businesses. You can come to our website, tworld.com, to learn more about what we do at Transworld. Feel free to ping me anytime on LinkedIn. I'm certainly always willing to talk to someone about buying and selling businesses. Listen, we want to do good deals for good people, right? So I'm always here to help people who have an idea or just want to get an idea of what businesses are, what their business might be worth out there.
Rock and roll. Well, Andy, thank you so much for hopping on, brother. I think we got a lot of value out of this podcast. And if there's nothing else that you got for everybody, we'll cut it there.
That's good. Thanks.
All right. Take care, guys.